Hello YouTube, this is Falco or Gyrovorbis from the Adventures in Game Development series. We've been talking about making an educational video for I think 2 months now, and it finally dawned on me what that should be. I've decided that since the #1 question I've been personal messaged and asked is, how do I begin in game development? How do I get started? How do I do what you guys are doing? I think that's what this video should be. It's kind of a way for me to give back to you guys who subscribe to us and helped us out. I also feel like I need to clear up some misconceptions about what all's involved in this. We decided to organize this a lot more logically than our other videos, which are kind of not logical at all. And it'll probably span multiple parts, I'm sure, because we're going to try and cover everything. And I'm going to have links to various articles, helpful things, development libraries on the, I don't know which side it's on, but it'll be on a side. Alright, let's get started. Okay, the first thing I'd like to address is commitment. I figured I'd start this movie out by shattering your hopes and dreams. First of all, this is not the first thing any of us have worked on. Is it the first thing you've worked on, Peter?
Nope.
No, it's not. I have been doing this stuff for about 4 years. I've had experience with a 2D platformer, a dance rhythm game, what else? A 2D shooter and a few other things, and every one of them have failed. And nobody's even heard of the name Gyrovorbis until now, when I finally have something to show off. This kind of thing doesn't happen overnight. I mean, I get comments from people like, did you learn this from a tutorial? Like, can I go to a website and do what you guys are doing? No, I'm sorry, you can't. I just kind of laugh at those. It takes several years to get anything really worthy of showing people. I feel like sometimes people forget that, because in a lot of our movies we screw around a lot, but this takes a lot of commitment, a lot of time. It's a lot of anti-socialness, would you say, Peter?
Yeah.
Yes, it's a lot of time alone, a lot of not hanging out with friends and stuff like that. You have to be very committed to this kind of thing before you do it, because the learning curve is really steep on programming especially. Okay, before I start throwing down and get started with where to begin, people have asked me, well, you need to do this, what do you need to buy? Honestly, you don't need to buy anything. Really, game development, you don't have to spend a penny on it. The only things I've ever bought are a few programming books, only because I kind of like having a reference there, not having to Google it, you know. Takes time. I don't like reading on the computer. But really, you have Google, you have web forums, you know, the development libraries, depending on what you use, are pretty much all free. You don't need to spend any money on resources. You could get started right now. Everything you need is already out there. You just have to step up and use it. Just go for it. Alright, so now let's get into this. I'm assuming if you're watching this video, you want to get into game programming. You're not interested in just Game Maker or anything like that. You want to really make your own game. There are multiple paths you can take depending on your level of experience. For those of you who have not been exposed to programming languages, don't know much about it, there's another path I would recommend. For those of you who have, you know, mucked around in HTML, JavaScript, you know, minimal programming knowledge, but you understand the theory and the logic behind programming, you're another level up, I believe, and I think that you should start at a different spot. Personally, I think there are 2 categories pretty much. Those of you who haven't had as much exposure to programming, I would recommend a language like Blitz Basic. I've heard of Dark Basic, things like that that are specifically made to help create games. These game programming languages are more simple. They let you achieve what you want more easily. It takes much less time for you to code in them. It's easier for you to make a game. The downside is they're much less powerful. The languages themselves are not multi-purpose. You're limited to just games pretty much. They're not industry standard. They're probably not multi-platform. But I believe that's where you should probably start if you don't have much experience. The reason being is because if you were to start with a language like C++, you would be spending so much time just learning the ins and outs of a language that complicated that you would pretty much be losing sight of the actual game development theory behind it. You'd be focusing more on the language than the actual game. By starting off with Blitz Plus or something like that, you're actually learning how to make the game instead of learning how to program. Then later on, after you've taken that path, when you feel competent that you can program in Blitz Plus or a higher level language like that, you can move on to C++. And then the concepts will be much easier to grasp because you're already familiar with the the concepts. And that is what Marcel's done. I mean, he knows C++, but his editor, if you've seen it in our videos, that's created in Blitz Plus, a game programming language. And the reason the editor's made in that is the same reason I've discussed. It's much easier. You don't have to put as much effort into it. The editor is not made to be multi-platform. There's really no reason. So we didn't want to put that much effort into it to create this entire editor utility in C or C++ because the amount of effort it would take just really wouldn't be worth it. So Marcel decided to just use Blitz Plus. And in a lot of ways, that's the better way to go. That's my advice to you. If you are not familiar with programming languages, if you are a newbie, I really recommend you start with a game development specific language. Okay, the next path I would only recommend for more experienced coders or people with just more experience in general. Maybe you've already gone the path of game development languages. Maybe you are a scripter, you've used Perl, Python, maybe you're a programmer and you've just never been into game development. In that case, I would recommend you learn C or C++ and then integrate it with an API like SDL, OpenGL, DirectX, Direct3D, something of that sort. The upside to that is it's much more powerful. C and C++, those are multi-purpose, they're general all-around languages. You can pretty much do whatever you want with your game. You're creating everything yourself. It's really low level. The downside, like I said, is the learning curve of something like that. It's going to take a very long time for you to be able to do that. That's the path we've taken with this game, and like I said, I've had 4 years of experience. Marcel's had about 3. Peter, you've had what, 1?
Something like that.
Yeah, he knows his stuff. Anyway, it takes a very long time. That's the downside to that, and that's why I wouldn't recommend beginning with that. But if you feel competent that that's the path you want to take, I recommend investing in a basic C++ book. I personally learned from a few years ago. I got a Sam's Teach Yourself C++ in 21 days. Cheap book, nothing complicated, obviously for beginners. I would recommend start there. Read the book. You don't have to read it all the way through. Read it until you are competent with the language. Then after that, you can select a graphics API or some sort of something that you can, add another dimension to C++ with, because obviously you're not going to make a text-based game. Something like OpenGL or SDL, those allow you to use graphics and sounds, not just C++. You can't. Those are additional libraries. Once you do that, you still have to learn how to use your API, how to integrate it with C and C++, and that's going to take even longer. But in the end, that's definitely, if you are extremely serious about this, that's by far the best way to go. We chose, right now we're using C and C++. On the PC, we're using SDL and OpenGL. On the Dreamcast, we're using a library called Cost or Callistios. It's a free library. And yeah, there's online tutorials, invest in books. It'll take you a long time, but if you're absolutely serious, it's the way to go.